Hi everyone, I'm going to be speaking to you today about Neptune moving into Aries, and there's quite a lot to say. Astrologers, including myself, are going to be talking about this for the next 14 years until March 2039, because that's how long Neptune is going to stay in Aries. So this isn't just a one-day wonder, a 1 week or a 1 month wonder. It's a 14-year transit. But just before I get into that, I would just, again, because I don't say it often enough, welcome new people, new subscribers, but also thank you immensely for all the love, the joyful comments, the wonderful interaction, participation from so many of you, and it is deeply appreciated. We really are a family of frequency operating here, so I'm so happy to be on this journey with you. Bless you all. We've all got our part to play in these extraordinary times. So what I'm going to do in this video is outline some of the broad themes that we might expect with Neptune moving into Aries, and also look at the chart for that ingress of Neptune into Aries, and also refer to some of the things that you might expect in your own chart. And I'm going to do this in quite broad terms because so much more of the detail is going to come out over the next 14 years. And also just to say that many of you know that Saturn is also entering Aries on the 25th of May. I will do another follow-up video because Saturn entering that sign is going to add other meanings into what I'm going to be saying today. So I'm just going to be really focused on the Neptune part of it. So Neptune is entering Aries this time around on the 30th of March. And it's an incredibly powerful period because March 2025 has been so powerful with the eclipses, the equinox, obviously, and all of that energy has kind of acted as or is continuing to act as a launch pad for Neptune into Aries. So it will stay in Aries until the 22nd of October. It will then retrograde back into Pisces, the last degree of Pisces, and it will re-enter Aries in January 2026 and stay there until 2039, as I say, March 2039. But really, from now on, it's going to be what is called the Aries point, or the world axis, which is 0 degrees of the cardinal, also within 2 degrees of that, 28 degrees of the mutable signs, Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, Pisces, and 2 degrees of the cardinal signs. They are Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn, until really February 2027. And so if you have any planets or angles between 28 of the mutables, 2 degrees of the cardinals, you are going to be feeling this ingress of Neptune into Aries in a bigger way than other people. It will connect you much more personally. And there's just way too much to say about every single planet and every single angle, but there will be a sense of, particularly if it's your sun or your moon, there will be a sense of reduced physical energy sometimes, but refined spiritual energy. The process of Neptune transits is to refine and to spiritualize at their best, so greater psychic sensitivity. That's going to be true for all of us, but particularly if it's aspecting sun, moon, or I would also say your Mercury, which it is for me over the next couple of years. So it's going to take us to a higher level. It gives us the potential of living at a higher level of spirituality. So at its best. So, this is a really wonderful transit. Now, I've already mentioned, as many others have, that it last entered Aries in April 1861. And as many of you know, that was within a day of the US Civil War breaking out. And yes, Neptune in Aries can idealize war, glorify war, but also think about what the US Civil War was about. It was a fight over slavery, because the southern states in America, slavery was very much, just horrific to think of. It's quite recent, really. It was very much embedded in their culture. They didn't want to give it up. There were 11, in particular, 11 southern states that did not want to give it up. Whereas in the north, they really were fighting against that. They felt that was very unjust. And so ultimately, the Civil War, although it started really about slavery, ultimately it by 1865 the 13th Amendment was passed in the US, and slavery was officially abolished in the US in 1865. Now, one may argue that it still continues in one form or another, not only in the US but in the world, but nevertheless, that's the official record, as it were. And of course, 1865, Neptune was still in Aries because it spends 13 to 14 years in each sign. So this was a fight, really, certainly by the northern states, to defend the slaves, to defend the underdog, to fight for what was right, to protect those people who were seen as less than, let's say. And it's very interesting because of one of the previous times that Neptune was in Aries was in 1370 to 1383. And in 1381 in England, there was the Peasants' Revolt. And the peasants, many of them were literally serfs that weren't even allowed to leave the land of the manor that they were tied to, as it were. That was a form of complete slavery. And so the Peasants' Revolt was a greater demand by the peasants for rights, more equal rights. So, and if we think of the other things that happened during Neptune in Aries, the Red Cross was founded while Neptune was in Aries in 1863. I believe St. Bernardo's also looking after orphan children. So there are many, and I could spend a whole day on this, the organizations that sprang up to take action, Aries to take action to protect those people seen as less than or excluded or peripheral or the underdogs or the underprivileged in society. So there's a very clear theme here. If you look back historically, a very clear theme about how that's working. So, that's really wonderful, because that suggests also going forwards there will be greater spiritual Neptune action to protect those seen as less than. And of course, that fits very well with Pluto in Aquarius, which is about shifting towards greater equability in society, away from top-down elitism, rich people at the top telling poor people at the bottom what to do. And Neptune, as soon as it moves into Aries, will be in a sextile to Pluto. Pluto's at 3 of Aquarius right now. Sextile, you can use up to a 4-degree orb, so they will be sextile. They will be in harmonious aspect to encourage this socioeconomic and political shift towards a more equal society, to protect those who up to now have been excluded or have benefited very little from the way society was structured. The other aspect as well, if we look back to when Neptune was previously in Aries, it was right at the end of Neptune in Aries, was in 1875 when Madame Blavatsky officially set up the Theosophical movement. And actually by then, Neptune was edging out of Aries, but in the few years, it was in the last few degrees of Aries, Madame Blavatsky, who was a fairly flamboyant character, had been exploring a lot of esoteric disciplines, Eastern philosophies of Buddhism and Hinduism and Gnosticism, Neoplatonism, that kind of thing. And she had really developed a new pioneering Aries vision for this new philosophy called theosophy. But she didn't kind of get it off the ground until Neptune had finally exited Aries. But while she was developing it and putting it together, Neptune was still in Aries, but it became a launch, a pioneering new philosophy, if you like. It was really very different for the time. So that's another aspect of this, taking religions, taking spiritual movements, taking philosophies, and turning them into something else which becomes visionary or pioneering in some way as Neptune enters Aries and, of course, again stays there for 14 years. So this is not all going to happen in week one, month one, year one. So I'm just talking about the very general trends there. So with Neptune in Aries, there is a trend towards socialism, making society more equal, because of the sensitivity to suffering that comes up as well. Also, a very different aspect of Neptune moving into Aries is it tends to be inflationary, by the way, as well, if we look back historically. But it's very much linked to spiritual action, being the spiritual warrior or the spiritual activist in some way. And I can see many ways that this is going to happen. What this will also do when Neptune moves into Aries, and particularly on those first 2 degrees of Aries, it will bring Neptunian themes onto the public stage in a bigger way, because those first 2 degrees of the cardinal signs, the Aries point or the world axis, has public projection. It pushes issues forwards. So all of the things I've talked about in great detail that are Neptunian themes will tend to be bigger issues on the world stage. The seas, the oceans, who owns them, that will become a bigger issue when Saturn moves in. What is the boundary? Are we going to see sea level changes? But what is the boundary? What is the ownership? But that's as Saturn moves in. I'll try and leave the Saturn meanings out of it for this video. So the seas, the oceans, pollution in the seas and oceans, toxicity. Remember, we are made of water. Anything to do with water will impact us because we are water beings. We're liquid crystals. So pharmaceutical drugs and how they've affected us, addictions, pharmaceutical companies, flooding. Recently, when we've had very strong Neptunian and Piscean energy, Neptune has been at the anoretic degree of Pisces. We've seen, and this is linked to cyclones as well, we've seen very strong cyclones in La Réunion, an island very close to Mauritius that was pretty much disappeared under a cyclone. Cars were washed into the sea. There was a big cyclone in Queensland, and there was another recent one. There's been a lot of flooding in the US as well, to an extraordinary degree. So flooding and cyclones could come up strongly as well. Another whole theme is scandals, lies, deceptions, deceits, the media, particularly where there's been a kind of veil. This is about disillusionment. It's about the veil dropping, and what we thought was true and good and honest isn't. There's a great feeling of disappointment and disillusionment, particularly in leaders, Aries. So leaders may fall from power at this time, and that's even more true when Saturn joins at the end of May, because Saturn is to do with traditional top-down structures, but disillusionment. So the one of the very positive ways we can turn this around is be your own spiritual hero. Be your own spiritual leader. Do not defer to external authority. Turn it inwards. This is another call to sovereignty and to your own autonomy. Also, personally, see where Neptune is moving to in your own chart at 0 of Aries. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you can download a free birth chart from my website. You can go to this link below and get a 2-part video series from my store that you can watch to infinity, as long as you like, as many times as you like. And that will teach you, this isn't a personalized birth chart analysis, these are teaching videos that will teach you how to find these points in your chart that I refer to and all of the updates and what the meaning is for you. So most certainly when a planet changes a sign, particularly an outer planet, there is a significant shift in energy, but particularly if Neptune is also moving over a house cusp for you, the divisions between the houses, because when these outer planets enter a house, when they're just crossing the cusp, we feel that planetary energy most strongly within a year or two of it entering, crossing the cusp of that particular house. So see what that house meaning is about. Is it about your home life, your family, your health, your career, your money? What is it? So because Neptune will bring in many ways, a sense of restlessness, a sense of yearning, a sense of dissatisfaction with the current status quo, a sense of, can I dream a bigger dream? Is this, a sense of escapism coming in, that you want to create something way better than this, more spiritual, more perfect in some way. Create a new dream. And for sure, whoever you are, this is a great opportunity for launching a new dream in your life, a new project, a new vision, a sense of an upgrade in the spiritual sense of you. An upgrade in the spiritual sense of you. And you may get greater clarity about that after Mercury and Venus have both finished their retrograde motions in April. It may take a little more into May till Venus moves out of its shadow phase in mid-May, but generally, even by mid-April, there will be a greater sense of clarity, because what Aries does generally is bring clarity, way more than Pisces. Pisces is pretty foggy. But particularly because Neptune is sextile to Pluto in Aquarius, both Aries and Aquarius have a sense of clarity, honesty, they're forthright, they both want more freedom, they want more independence. And so there's some parallels here, and they're in harmonious aspect, as I say. They want more, they've got a much greater sense of, I want to move forwards. They're futuristic, they're independent, they're about freedom, they're about sovereignty. Also, I think Neptune in Aries can soften some of the more assertive or brash or aggressive side of the lower expression of Aries. Aggression, impulsivity, assertiveness, ego drive. It's all about me, me, me. Neptune can soften that and bring in more spirituality into the picture. Less ego driven. It's more concerned with the spiritual oneness, if you like, feeding it back to this sense of oneness. So let me show you the chart for Neptune's ingress into Aries. Okay, so let's just take a look at this chart. Now, it is so similar to the solar eclipse in Aries chart that I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time on it. I will put the link for the solar eclipse in Aries chart below, because that is literally one day before Neptune moves into Aries. So I'm just going to pick up a few things here, because as I say, I'm going to be talking about this, and so is every other astrologer for the next 14 years. So Neptune here, 0 of Aries. It literally moves in that day and stays at 0 of Aries pretty much all of that day. And look at the number of planets in degrees of 23 onwards of their sign. We've got Mars, we've got Saturn, we've got the North Node, we've got Venus, we've got Mercury, we've got Eris, we've got the Moon, we've got Uranus. I mean, remarkable number of planets in the last kind of 7 degrees of their signs, which is really emphasizing the ending. This is a huge time of ending in human history, and I think we can all see that. And I've talked about endings and beginnings in many respects in recent months. So here we see what I've been talking about here, that Neptune is sextile to Pluto at 3 degrees of Aquarius, and I've been talking about the meanings of that, and certainly more clarity coming in. Also, what's lovely here is that the Sun is conjunct Salacia exact to the degree, 10 degrees of Aries. And I mentioned recently Salacia is mermaid energy, wife of Neptune in myth, linked to the shimmering sunlight, moonlight on the sea. I mentioned that when we had the solar eclipse, I think it was the 2nd of October last year, that Salacia was exactly aspected by that solar eclipse. The solar eclipse was at 10 of Libra, and it was exactly to the degree opposing Salacia. And I was with Veda Austin in Glastonbury then, doing some wonderful experiments with water and producing what looked like light squiggles in the water. And we just had an idea, is this about light language? And this certainly isn't statistically significant, but since that time, probably about 25 people have written to me and said that spontaneously, around about the time of that eclipse in early October, they started to speak light language. And that also suggests for them it was an upshift in frequency, of course. So I think from this point on, we are going to learn an immense amount about light. We know that we ourselves as humans are liquid crystals. We know that light is, water is condensed light, and it's the light that carries the information. I think we are just going to discover so much about light. So much to say about this. Which I'll pick up actually in another video. But the birth of this kind of new spiritual era, if you like, is very much, which I mentioned in the solar eclipse video, very much about unconditional love. North Node, Venus, which is exalted in Pisces, Mercury, also Neptune is included in this this stellium conjunction, this multiple conjunction, is all about birthing a new us and a new era with unconditional love, which is very beautiful. Another thing to pick up here is that Jupiter expands, whatever it touches is tightly square to Ceres. Ceres is the goddess of corn, harvests, at 13 of Pisces. This is a square aspect, quite a tight square aspect. And this does suggest that something is going to be magnified around food production, linked perhaps to flooding, Pisces, or to fires, Aries. Look at all this primal fire. We've got Neptune, Sun, Salacia, Eris, Chiron, Eris, the Moon. Incredible lineup of planets in Aries. And bizarrely, we are seeing fires. They're popping up spontaneously in various parts of the UK, which is a very unusual time of year because we've had so much rain over winter. They are also popping up in various parts of the US, I believe North Carolina and Florida. Again, quite a, and you know, people are making videos about this and saying this is quite unusual. So I don't know how unusual, but simply the symbolism of the astrology is suggesting there could be some food production issues connected to food and flooding. Connected to fires and flooding. So always have some dried food at home, have some basic supplies, so you're not caught out. That's something, when I grew up in northeastern England and we were cut off with snow for 6 weeks every year, it was just a regular thing for us. What has changed since the solar eclipse is the position of the moon. The moon has moved from 9 degrees the day before this on the 29th to 25 degrees. And my goodness, wow, it is really tightly conjunct, not even a degree away from Eris, warrior sister of Mars, feisty street fighter. It's also conjunct Chiron. They are all being squared by Mars. Mars is still out of bounds beyond its normal 23 degrees of the ecliptic. Planets normally orbit within 23 degrees of the ecliptic, north or south. Mars has been orbiting beyond that for, I think it was from December it began, and it won't end until the 7th of April. So at the ingress of Neptunian Aries, Mars, this out of control, more extreme Mars, is squaring Moon, Eris, Chiron. Now, Moon in mundane astrology represents the people. The people potentially are already very angry and rebellious and eruptive here, conjunct Eris. Eris is quite similar to Uranus in its symbolism, demanding justice, demanding truth, demanding equality, demanding everybody being heard. So this is all already quite an inflammable and combustible sense of anger amongst the people. It is, fuel is added to the fire by Mars squaring that, a hard aspect. And that is perhaps because people feel wounded or felt they've been kept down. Eris, not heard, wounded in some way, excluded. Chiron. And also there's this very strong sense of wanting to have a sense of emotional and practical security, needing to feel safe. And if you don't feel safe, you're gonna shout about it. And look at the protests taking place right now in Serbia. It's been going on for weeks, millions on the street, every day, every night. Look at the riots, major protests against President Erdogan in Turkey, because he has arrested a rival, the mayor in Belgrade, and huge public protests about that. We are going to see a lot more revolutionary energy through 2025. Not only that's signaled here very clearly in the astrology, it was also signaled actually in the solar eclipse as of the 29th of March, but also, as I've talked extensively, Pluto in Aquarius, the sign of revolution, demanding more freedom, more equality, is going to be there until 2044. So we are into very rebellious, revolutionary times, particularly, I would say, in 2025. So it can also mean this aspect between Mars and the stellium, particularly the Chiron here, can mean that we're angry and we want to take action, but we may still a little bit feel too vulnerable to take action. We're not confident enough. But I'd suggest once we get together in numbers, and this isn't a rallying call for any violence at all, please understand that I would never promote violence, but there's a need to come together in community. Pluto in Aquarius, big time, big time, big time. Need to come together in community. And I know various spiritual voices and leaders out there are being encouraged by their guides to offer more events in community. Community is the way to go. Coming together in community, families of frequency, so we can move ahead, we can magnify our energy in numbers. So as I say, I'll stop sharing here, but once Saturn moves into Aries also in May, I will do another video to add in the meaning of Saturn, because that will really add so much to what I've been talking about today. So this is just the very first video to give us a taste for some of the themes that may come up. So watch your dreams, keep a dream diary, be tuned into nature more, maybe meditate more, maybe do more breath work, have a stronger spiritual practice from now on. And that is emphasized again. Saturn moves in, the practice, the discipline, but start it now if you can. Listen to the nudges, meditations, visions, dreams, listen to the messages. Have a finer antennae on what you are being nudged towards, what is coming into your reality. What are the ingredients that are feeding what you are already becoming? What you are already becoming. There is absolute potential for a spiritual upgrade here, a finer version of what you have lived to this date. Many people are going through big jumps in energy at this time, spiritual upgrades. Particularly, remember, Nancy Rebecca was talking about this galactic super wave of energy that was going to peak between the 29th of March and the 7th of April. Well, we are right in that period with the ingress of Neptune into Aries. And I have gone through quite a dramatic upgrade, it's fair to say, on the total lunar eclipse. And I know many, many people have. And so think of the launch pad, as I said at the beginning, think of the launch pad for this Neptune moving into Aries. Total lunar eclipse, super powerful. Solar eclipse the day before. The equinox as well. And the equinox doesn't always happen the same month as the eclipses. There has been incredibly powerful surges of energy to really rocket fuel this launch of Neptune into Aries. So remember, this is modeling clay. There's nothing fatalistic about this. This is modeling clay. The future doesn't have to replicate the past. It's up to us as the co-creators, the co-directors, the co-producers. It's up to us how we manifest Neptune in Aries in the world. So let's make it the absolute best that we can do in terms of protecting those who are less privileged, have less of a voice, however we do that. So we have this much greater sense of oneness, of one consciousness moving together to create a more loving world for all. God bless. I hope that's helped you. Be back very soon with all kinds of different videos. Thanks so much for listening. Bye for now.